Done.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of CPG Insiders. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Young, with my co-host, Justin Gerard, the Robin to my Batman.
Oh, boy. This is how we're going to start.
Justin, you've noticed you have never seen Batman and I in a room together.
This has escalated quickly. Now, in fairness, I've also never seen you in the room with Robin.
True. The voice that you hear, folks, is our guest today, who is, oddly enough, Dr. Mark Young.
That is true.
Now, there are two of them, people. There are two Dr. Mark Youngs, believe it or not. As you may have suspected, there could be a connection. The Dr. Mark Young, who is our guest today, actually happens to be my son, and he runs an ad agency in Florida called the Rise Agency. And he does a lot of wonderful stuff in direct-to-consumer and the digital space, and really does a lot of work in the health and wellness area. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about TikTok. See, you asked me to say it like that, so I did.
I'm so happy.
So we get a lot of people ask us, first off, Justin, as you know, we get calls from everybody. Oh, we want to do TikTok. We want to have a TikTok campaign.
Yep.
So figured, okay, we're going to bring somebody who's an expert on TikTok. We're going to talk about how do you do it? When do you do it? Is it appropriate for everything? Does it fit certain demographics? Is TikTok really just, 13-year-old girls watching cat videos? What's going on here? So Mark, I'm going to turn this over to you. Tell us about TikTok. Is it just this weird thing where teenagers are watching cat videos, or what's going on there?
Oh, wow. That's a very large question. I know. Welcome to the podcast. Tell me about TikTok.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that I would start with in that conversation, first of all, thank you. I mean, amazing introduction. I mean, I feel I know more about me than I did before. But the reality is that I think we need to talk about a broader conversation than TikTok first, and that is just social media in general. Because I think in order to isolate TikTok into its niche, we need to understand the entire universe of social media and where TikTok fits in there. So when we talk about social media at large, we talk about the largest platforms like Meta. I'll actually throw in more than just social and talk about digital in general, and talk about even search engines like Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, and the bigger search engines. But when it comes to social specifically, Meta still has the market. I mean, Meta is still the largest of all of those, and Meta is Instagram and Facebook. So I want to talk about those two individually, not Meta as the ownership company. And then we've got the outliers like Truth Social. We've got the outliers like Snapchat. Would be remiss in not throwing in Twitter, now X, into that mix and social media as well. And then TikTok has made a huge impact in this space as well. But I want to kind of timeline that a little bit. When social media began, I think everybody would remember, anybody listening to this podcast anyways, would remember the introduction of Facebook, right? What was that, 2008-ish, 2007?
I remember MySpace, when you guys all had to have MySpace accounts.
You're correct. Yes, MySpace, which taught the world
Or as your
HTML.
grandmother used to call Face Space.
Yes. MySpace, that taught the world HTML and how to display their moods through a depressing song. So yeah, MySpace came along, people got their MySpace, but then Facebook really came in and dominated that market, ultimately putting them out. So MySpace was all the young people. Most older demographics didn't actually have a MySpace account. That was pretty limited to the teens and 20s group. When Facebook came along, it was the replacement for MySpace in many ways. And it really started, if people really remember, it was you always spoke on Facebook in a first person, because it always, the way that it tell me what's on your mind kind of stuff. And it really was a young adapter, right? It's the Zuckerberg college crowd that really started in the Facebook space. And then Instagram got created, and Instagram was no more about the words. It was more about storytelling through pictures, which means as the Facebook crowd aged, Facebook started becoming more of the 30s demographic. But then the 20s and the teens ended up really leaning into Instagram. Well, then fast forward a few years, now the 40s and the 50s are now using Facebook. And then the 30 somethings are all using Instagram. And then the kids all went to Snapchat. And then Snapchat became the thing. Snapchat was somewhat short-lived. It still is around, but it actually has been used more for its, for its video filters and stuff more than actual communication. And the fact that it also wipes out all of your communications after it's viewed after 2 seconds. So it's used for a lot of sexting. But then TikTok. Where does TikTok fit into this? Well, when we demographically start targeting different profiles, I'm going to make a broad generalization, and I'm going to say grandma uses Facebook, mom uses Instagram, and the kids are now using TikTok. That's kind of you use the phrase, is it the girls watching cat videos?
So grandma's on Facebook to see what the grandkids are doing.
Well, grandma used to be on Facebook to see what the grandkids are doing. The issue now is the grandkids aren't on Facebook anymore. So most of the even low-end millennials to the new, whatever the Gen Alphas or whatever they're calling them now, they don't even have Facebook accounts. The only reason they have a Facebook profile is because they used it to start an Instagram account because of the joint ownership by Meta. But TikTok is... I'm going to make some broad generalizations so nobody freak out and give me but I have a friend who's 73 and uses TikTok. Like, yeah, we know that happens. But by and large, demographically, TikTok users are younger. They do fall into the 20s and teens categories. There's an early 30s demo there. Super interesting. There's also an over 50s crowd that has now started paying more attention to TikTok. They are getting that. But by and large, Facebook is your oldest demo. Instagram falls in the middle. TikTok has now wiped out Snapchat in terms of its ability to do that. And I will go into the psychographics of that a little bit.
By the way, where does X fall in that game?
So X is an interesting one because X is not the same type of engagement, but X tends to attract an older male. So that's the primary demographic that we find on X. Not to say that everybody is, but the kids are not on X. Twitter has become an old man's playground. And that's
I resemble that remark.
Fair. And again, in that same vein, I would tell you I'm more of an Instagram user than I use Facebook or than I use TikTok. I would imagine, Justin, you're probably more of an Instagram user too, just based on age and demographic. And part of that is because the content that I'm most interested in is on that platform. The people that I engage with regularly are on that platform. It actually makes me laugh a little bit because your profile and my profiles often get confused online because of having the same name. Thank you for that. But it's funny to me because the platforms where I am present are the opposite of the platforms where you're present. Mm-hmm. And it often leads into people just thinking it's one persona on all platforms. Because you don't even have an Instagram account, but that's where I'm most active. I don't use my Twitter account, but that's where you're most active. So people do get confused in that, which rightfully so. So TikTok, I want to, if I can, I don't want to do all the talking here, but from a social media perspective, it's a different type of audience, but it's also a different type of content. And as a digital agency, one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is content adaptation. We find that the content that's needed for every platform is unique too. I mean, for instance, TikTok is all very vertical. It's that portrait, fill the entire screen, 9:16 aspect ratio versus Instagram used to be 1x1 inch squares. Now it's got a bit of a taller profile to that content, so it's more of a rectangle. But Facebook, for instance, is mostly engaged on a horizontal. So that's changing a little bit, different posting platforms and whatnot. But I think the more interesting conversation, particularly to your listeners, is, not the history of social media or the size of the content, but the psychographics of the people who are engaging that and why.
So getting back to clients who want to put their products on TikTok, what are the things that tend to do well there?
So TikTok, and again, this goes back to that content. TikTok is intended to be a fast scroll. TikTok, to me, for anyone who's old enough to remember this, I'm going to age myself here and say, if anybody remembers the website hotornot.com.
Oh, yes.
So if you remember Hot or Not, and Hot or Not was you uploaded a photo of yourself, and then people went through, and on a scale of 1 to 10, people clicked on whether or not you were a number 1 through a 10, depending on how attractive you were in your photo.
Is that still around, by the way?
I don't know. It's been a long time. But you'd click on your Hot or Not, and then what immediately happened when you clicked was the next picture appeared. Mm-hmm. And the next picture immediately appeared because it obliged you to rate that one. And then it obliged you to rate the next one, because the exit strategy to one vote was the demonstration of another user, right? So it became this dopamine hit over and over and over again, because every time I clicked, I was obliged to click again. And again, that really becomes that dopamine hit. And people get addicted to that, because dopamine hits it's the same type of thing that you're going to get from, I'm going to say from a drug, but even more of that, it's the I bought something, it's the shopping experience, it's the anything that's providing that real short-term hit. TikTok is designed the exact same way.
By the way, I just went and checked, and Hot or Not is now a dating site.
Not surprising. But TikTok is literally designed the same way. It's I'm on here, there's a video, but the only exit to a video is another video. So I can't go to the dashboard. If there's nothing to do that, like in order to get rid of a video, immediately the next video appears, and it's dopamine. It's dopamine. It's dopamine. And I make the correlation into that with the shopping analogy, simply because when you're talking about product conversions on TikTok, product conversions cannot be consideration purchases. They have to be impulse buys, because things that are selling on TikTok are 100% impulse purchases, because the platform itself is set up as a dopamine hit.
So do they tend to be $20
$50 and under?
50 or under. Okay.
Yeah, $50 and under is really where we find the sweet spot on TikTok. Now, people do ask questions about TikTok Shop, and so on and so forth. TikTok Shop is a platform much like Amazon. So, for instance, Instagram and Meta, you still have to drive the traffic to a landing page or drive the traffic to your website. TikTok, you can actually let them buy in platform, much like an Amazon purchase. You can actually shop right on TikTok, even if you're not scrolling. Now, because of that, TikTok, of course, takes a percentage, but they've got their own like FBA equivalents and whatnot for Amazon users. It is not required. You can actually, as opposed to Amazon, where you have to buy on Amazon, with TikTok, if you see something, you can also link it to a website or a landing page and send them off-site to do a conversion. But again, it's that dopamine hit. So products that are more expensive, or something that we would refer to as a consideration purchase, we never recommend getting on TikTok. It's $50 and under. Now, there are ways that you can utilize TikTok to get the 50 and over product. And the way to do that is through lead generation and lead capture. So I need you to get your dopamine hit by engaging, not necessarily by purchasing. So if I'm selling you a $200 to $300 product, I can certainly get your email address. Then I can continue and sow into you, if that makes sense. I can continue the relationship, continue down that education funnel and that consideration funnel with you over weeks or months, however that long that consideration purchase is. But I have to have some kind of impulse engagement, because if you're trying to sell me a $500 product on TikTok, I scroll to the next video because that's what the app obliges me to do.
So to get your email address, am I giving you a free video to watch? Am I giving you a downloaded booklet or something? What's the value that I give you to get you to give me up that email address?
So yes, the answer is that usually there is what we call a social exchange that takes place, and that is you give me something, I feel obligated to give you something back. And that is just the way our brains are wired, right? Nothing is free. Everything is a transaction. So if you ask me for an email address, then you obligatorily owe me something in return. And that really the value statement on that exchange really is dependent on what the product is. So for some people, it's going to be give me an email address and I will send you a discount. I'll send you a coupon code and then we can continue the conversation offline. For some people or some products, it's going to be a digital download, learn more. For some, it's going to be unlocking exclusive video content. For instance, we have a client that utilizes TikTok very well. We do large TikTok buys for this client. And with that, what ends up happening is it's a click to learn more. And we're going to give you a 2-minute reel that's going to talk to you about, the value of our training program. Well, the training program sells for thousands of dollars. Like, how are we successful on TikTok then? Well, because the ads are going to lead to a learn more, where it's going to take you offline to a landing page that's then going to get you out of TikTok, because I'm going to take you to a landing page, and that landing page is going to solicit your email address and phone number so that the call center can then hammer you and set appointments so that we can teach you about this and drive you to a YouTube channel that's going to give you additional information. So the nudge is that if I want to continue a conversation, I need to get you out of TikTok, because your brain craves the next dopamine hit. So I need to get you off that platform if I want to continue the conversation, because I'm not able to provide that for you.
When you talk about this dopamine hit, a friend of mine name is Anna Lemke, and she's a neurologist professor, and she wrote the book Dopamine Nation.
Oh, yeah.
And Anna, I spoke to Anna to some extent about this, and I was talking to her about patients, and she was saying how she deals with a lot of patients who have social media addiction, and that she has to put them on 8-week to 90-day detoxes.
Yep.
To break their addiction to dopamine and to actually correct the dopamine resistance that happens in the dopamine receptors in the brain because of this constant pounding of dopamine.
Well, and so part of the problem, and I'll speak to that physiologically and say part of the problem that we see with this dopamine addiction that's happening is that your body is wired to need a certain amount of that dopamine, right? The problem is as you're saying, there becomes a desensitization to it, which means real situations where dopamine is beneficial, the dopamine has no effect anymore.
Yeah, she likens it to insulin resistance.
Sure. Or people who just take so much Tylenol that they don't get a pain reaction to it anymore. Now they've got to go to a heavier pain med because it no longer has an issue. But strangely enough, I'll say, physiologically and psychologically, where that actually has the greatest amount of impact is in interpersonal relationships. And part of that reason is that a person who gets this nonstop dopamine, I will say this, that, the person who gets this nonstop dopamine rush from TikTok doesn't get that from their partner, right? Your spouse is never going to provide you with 24-hour dopamine hits.
Right. This is why you see couples out to eat and they're both staring into their phones as they sit across from each other.
Right. Because they're not able to give each other what their brain is craving anymore, because the brain is craving this dopamine hit. And it's why you see couples who are going to bed with their phones in their hands. It's like, if you're in bed with your spouse and you're both holding your phones, there's a deeper problem here that you both need to consider.
So now you just brought up the whole issue of the ethics of marketers using social media as a way to sell our goods, because we somewhat know that we're part and parcel to causing psychological problems to people if you think about it.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, it's not so much that I look at us as being a drug dealer of sorts.
Right.
But the reality is that we're sending out ad messages, whether it's a billboard, whether it's a TV commercial, whether or not it's skywriting. The personal responsibility of the user is a different situation. And TikTok users are going to use TikTok regardless of whether an advertisement is on there or not, right? So that all you're doing is providing different content. And truthfully, if you provide content that gets them out of TikTok, that's probably better. But the average adult user on a TikTok platform is spending nearly an hour a day scrolling the platform. So much time. The real number is 52 minutes.
Wow.
For every TikTok user. The 52 is the average.
Wow.
Now think about the people who have a TikTok account. Correct. Well, it could be more than half. It depends on how many of them are like, I don't use TikTok personally. I don't like it as a platform, but I have an account, so I'm part of the average.
Right.
So one of the things that I always tell people, and that is that advertising done ethically is us using all of these different platforms, television, TikTok, whatever the case is. And we're using these platforms to inform people of products that can make their lives better. And we're helping them overcome their own fears, because people have a fear of change. And that's part of what we're doing is we're exposing them to new items and giving them messages that help them feel confident and feel safe and feel that they can experiment with something new, which is there to make their lives better. Now, by the way, there is a lot of advertising out there that does not make your life better. We try to not be a part of that, but it is out there.
Well, I think that's an integrity thing on the part of an agency. Like I had a guy in interviewing yesterday, and he asked me the question, like, what do you enjoy most about what you do? And I said, well, that's a good question. I said, actually, I think it's twofold. I'm like, but my first response to him was that from an integrity standpoint, I will only work with clients that I believe are actually making a positive impact in the world. Right. Like I don't want to work with a brand that's out there to just predatorily hurt people and make money. Or people like I said, I don't want to be the advertising agency that works with Pepsi. Sure, there would be incredible financial reward, but you're not doing anything to make the world better.
Yeah, we had one of the nation's largest meal replacement companies come to us and looked at their formula, and their formula had 32 grams of sugar in it. And I asked them if they were reformulating. They said they just did. And my comment to them was, you have the exact equivalent of sugar as 2 Krispy Kreme donuts. And their comment was, but we're meal replacement, and if people do drink this in place of breakfast and lunch, they'll lose weight. And my response was, but they might turn diabetic. And their answer was, but we're not treating diabetes, we're helping people lose weight.
Yeah.
And we literally said, we're probably not a good match for you because we're just not going to believe in this.
No, not even a little bit.
So what are the best products for TikTok? Who belongs there and who doesn't belong there? Some samples.
Yeah.
Or examples.
Products that do really well on TikTok are, and I want to bend that conversation a little bit to say that we're seeing an inordinate lift in health awareness, in social awareness, in good citizenship type branding that's taking place. And this could be part of this, healthy zeitgeist that we're seeing in the MAHA movement. This could be part of just, the nation's bent towards this. We're seeing that alcohol consumption, it is at a 70-year low. Because young people are just not consuming alcohol the way that they used to or in prior generations. Like college kids aren't going out and partying the way that they used to back when I was in school. Right. Now it's everybody goes and plays pickleball together or goes to a yoga class together or something, right? Like there's more community focused around that. So
this cannabis offsetting some of that, by the way.
It's a possibility, but actually the use of cannabis is down also. So So I
Good.
don't think that's it. There's much more of a social conscience in this generation than we've seen in a while.
Yeah,
And I
it's a big
think part of that
sobriety
is,
movement.
well, I think part of it is a post-COVID generation. So post-COVID generation got locked up for a while. So I think they've actually learned the value of community, whether implicitly or explicitly. They're now doing more community and more health-related things. At least a good part of the population. So what products do well on TikTok? So again, with the filter of when you're talking to young people, make sure that you're speaking their language. I'm going to say things that are, first of all, under $50. I'm going to say products that are makeup, that are hair, that are these types of trinkets and trash almost kind of stuff. But we're seeing a lot of movement in supplements. We're seeing a lot of movement in health related, low priced type items that are doing well on there. We're seeing a lot of movement in exercise type things. Obviously, clothes and purses and this type of stuff is just kind of staples. But the health and beauty category does really, really well. And I want to add part of the reason behind that is health and beauty crushes on social, but part of the reason is because you've got to think of TikTok. It is entirely video driven.
Mm-hmm.
So products that do well on a TikTok channel are products that are very demonstrable and products that have a heavy video, almost sage on the stage, user generated content focused to them. So the more organic looking, the better. But it's pretty easy for a makeup company to show a picture of a girl before she did her makeup and then show her going out for the night, or a picture of, even a guy's outfit and then showing how a man can take a boring outfit and make it look good to go out on a date. Those types of things are super easily demonstrated because you have to demonstrate those things visually, right? I can't tell you about the makeup. I have to show it to you.
Does it require a lot of new content?
Content? Yeah, let's talk about content because one of the things that I would tell a brand if they're interested in getting into a TikTok world is that a lot of brands on Instagram and Facebook are still able to use a lot of static content. And by static, I just mean pictures. It's a stock image with your product next to it. That doesn't work on TikTok. TikTok's entirely video and audio. And what we're seeing on TikTok, because of the speed of the scroll and the duration of consumption, meaning the amount of time that a person is spending, they're seeing a lot of content in a short amount of time. So the amount of impressions that a brand gets is astronomical. The problem is content, we call it creative fatigue, is about 10 days. Like a piece of content is done in 10 days.
So literally, I've got to shoot a new video almost every week to week and a half.
100%. And not one, because usually you have to have 3 or 4 lines in the water at a time. So 3 or 4 videos are all running in conjunction with each other in order to make sure that you've got brand reinforcement and that you're getting frequency without repetition. So I see your brand 3 or 4 times, but I didn't see the same ad 3 or 4 times. So I'm not getting exhausted by the commercial. It's a different commercial advertising the same product. I'm using the word commercial loosely. But I've seen 3 or 4 different messages about the same product, but I've seen them all 2-3 times over the course of the last 10 days. Now your creative's fatigued. It is an exhausting goal because, again, everything's video. So being able to produce some kind of quality video that has 3 or 4 iterations every 10 days to stay fresh is tough. Now, there are answers to that, which I know is where we probably need to go next. That is, what does a brand do if they can't create content that fast, right? There's only so many times I can get somebody's makeup done and demonstrate my makeup brush. I'll give you 2 answers to that. The first answer is going to be AI. AI has become so high quality nowadays that it is engaging. And the use of AI is an easy way, I will say, to create content quickly and be able to do script adjustments and setting adjustments and all this other kind of stuff. And some of that can be the same pitch with a different background. Some of that can be the same voice. We recently, this is actually kind of funny. I've got a client that we've worked with on this, and his entire pitch is him on camera. Every piece of content is like a YouTube video, and you can only cut those videos so many times to get a soundbite. But he's super busy and cannot produce, 4 or 5 versions of it every 10 days for us. Like, there's only so much the guy has to say. And we've actually found success in, we're writing AI scripts so that the script is fresh with different angles all the time. We've used, one AI tool, Collaborator, to help draft scripts that convert. We've used another tool to perfectly emulate his voice, which is really interesting because he's got this unique Southern accent. But literally we've used it and verified it with him and went through multiple security levels to make sure that we weren't like confessing to murders. But then we've used images, multiple different images, and been able to AI recreate him. So we're actually using him as an AI avatar and sticking him in different settings, uploading different scripts, and having his voice deliver the content to camera. So we're able to just AI generate in a couple of hours what would have taken him weeks to produce, and it's his voice, and it's his image, and it's his, everything, his content, his product, and so on. So we've able to fast track that.
It's still not cheap though, because that takes a highly skilled person to be able to really do that and make it look real.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. And that is the necessity with AI right now is it either looks so real that it's virtually undetectable, or it's so not real that it's intentional. But you do not want to live in that middle ground, because the middle ground looks fraudulent.
Right. That's where you get the guy with 6 fingers on his hand.
Correct. And AI is better about that stuff now. I think I was talking with someone the other day who was like, well, I read an article about AI, and my response was yeah, you did. And by the time the article got published, everything that was in it was outdated.
Or the article was written by AI.
Also true. Also possibly true.
Possible.
But the reality is that it's just advancing so quickly that by the time anybody develops an impression of it, the impression is outdated. Like it's moving that fast. To a question, probably not for this call, but I also solved your problem about green screen stuff.
Oh, nice.
So in addition to that, though, you're right. Like, you're going to pay for someone who understands what they're doing. Like, that's not a cheap proposal. Right. Our team's really good at it. So we've been able to do some stuff that I'll say is completely undetectable as being AI. And we've done other stuff that's completely animated. In a past life, when I worked with more TV stuff, like, we're able to pull off $100,000 video shoots in a couple of hours on a Saturday. Because it's just so advanced that the world is changing so fast. I do want to give you the second answer to that question, though, about how do you deal with that kind of content. TikTok also has recently, I would say within the last few months, they've opened a channel called TikTok One. And TikTok One is actually a UGC machine. So what they do is you actually put a creative brief into content creators, and there is an army of content creators that just go make content about your brand, and they don't even need your product, which is really weird. They talk about it. It's kind of like a Match.com where, the creator says they're interested in your product. You say that you're interested in the creator. But the nuance to it is that TikTok, you don't pay these people. They create all the content for free for you. But what happens is your ad budget gets spent. I'm going to call it whitelisting. For anyone who knows what that is, your ad budget is actually spent whitelisting that content off of their TikTok channel. So your name and your brand is not the advertiser. This is Susie Homebody, who's just talking about your product, which means the content, like a whitelist, looks very, very organic, because it was created using somebody's phone likely. But it's content that's being created and refreshed on the regular. And Susie's job is to just sit and make content for multiple brands, and that's what she does for a living. And then what happens is Susie's content, she's rewarded for good content, because the better the conversion on her content, she's getting paid because she's getting a percentage of the ad spend that you're spending on TikTok. So TikTok has net in effect solved their own problem, because they understand the velocity of creative fatigue. So they've created an entire group of content creators to fix the problem for you. But you can only use the content if you spend the money on TikTok, because you can't take those videos to Meta.
Yeah, that's pretty smart use of TikTok,
smart.
because you think about it, the creator has all the motivation in the world to do great work, because the better the video works, the more you will spend on media, so the more the creator will earn.
100%.
And then meanwhile, the creator's probably getting additional followers out of this too.
100%, because anybody who is inorganically served the ad but likes the content ends up following the creator, because that's the channel that the ad is being pushed from.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
and TikTok, by the way, over the course of the last few months, they've done a dollar for dollar ad spend match. They're still doing it right now, where you spend $15,000 in ads and we'll give you $15,000 ad credit. So they are strongly encouraging people to do this. Now, I have a theory.
Is it a one-time deal, or is it every 15 you put in?
It's the one-time deal at sign up.
Okay.
But I will say that I've got a theory. And part of my theory behind TikTok One, and this is all my conspiracy side, but this is my belief on this, is that TikTok, because of the issues they had with the federal government and the Chinese ownership back in January, specifically when they had their week off, because of that, what I believe is happening is TikTok rolled out TikTok One very shortly afterwards and started passing out ad credits specifically to U.S. advertisers. And I believe TikTok was trying to make sure, in a very, very fast way, they demonstrated their impact on GDP and anchored themselves in the advertising space. And because of that, I think they were making a case for themselves to never be removed from media. And it's smart.
So I'm going to diverge off this just for a second, because we've been talking about AI. And I know the show's about TikTok, but I want to get your input on one other topic here before we wrap up. What is, in your opinion, what is the impact AI is going to have on the paid search world?
Wow. Yeah. So anything I tell you is going to be conjecture, because nobody has that answer right now. The answer is that Google is pushing AI content as a search result. Mm-hmm. And it's prioritizing it over sponsored ads. Mm-hmm. So intuitively, that really looks like a bad decision for Google, but we can all agree that Google does nothing without an agenda. That would be foolish of them to do that. So the question that is pervasive industry-wide right now is, what does Google have planned? Because you're certainly not trying to hurt your advertisers by prioritizing organic content over sponsored ads. And people who are unfamiliar with that, what I mean is, when you used to type in a word on Google, the first 3 searches were all sponsored, which means that somebody paid to be presented to a person when they're looking for it, right? Like, you found relevant words, you're paying to get exposed to people searching for those types of things. Then all the organic listings were beneath that, and then you'd rank organic, which always to the consumer were more trustworthy responses, because those were what we call SEO, or search engine optimized. In the AI world, now that we're getting these recommendations from AI, it's prioritized over sponsored ads as well as sponsored over SEO ads.
Yeah.
The belief industry-wide right now, I'm probably speaking on behalf of people who may or may not agree with me. What I would say the belief is that Google is allowing that AI content to program their algorithm and see how many people are engaging with it, and then ranking content based on engagement right now, and then eventually could monetize it. We don't know that to be true because monetized AI is not officially AI. So if you're talking to a pseudo sentient being about getting responses and it's only giving you ads back, you've created another search engine. So it's a good question. I don't have a clear answer on it because I don't think, to my knowledge, Google has not released a strategy for it.
It
But
seems
it's
to me
there.
that Google's going to lose traffic just by people who are just going to go to ChatGPT.
Google's already losing tremendous traffic based on that. And the fear, and I've actually probably talked to 3 or 4 people this week and had that conversation, that they just don't use Google anymore. They ask answers of ChatGPT, which is still a fear because 2 things happen there. The first thing is that ChatGPT hasn't ranked, doesn't have necessarily a rank in mind yet for what is relevant content from a search engine perspective. So that's still kind of a nebulous kind of response. Second thing is ChatGPT still hallucinates on things.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are using ChatGPT and quoting statistics off of it. It's like, that's not fair either because ChatGPT just makes stuff up if it doesn't know an answer still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen ChatGPT. I've gone there for statistics, and it gives me a statistic, and then it gives me another paragraph with another statistic that doesn't match the first paragraph.
Well, and part of that is because it's pulling data from what it knows, and it's only pulling what it knows from user content. And when user content disagrees, ChatGPT still doesn't know how to draw the line between 2 facts that may be at odds with each other. And a lot of times, again, that's a prompting problem, simply because if you ask it a question and say, as an MD, how would you diagnose this problem? But then you ask it as a Pilates instructor, how would you diagnose this problem? You're going to get 2 different answers because you're getting it from the perspective of 2 different people, and which is why the best prompting on ChatGPT always comes with asking it questions and identifying who the authorities on the matter are from your opinion. So, for instance, when I ask it questions, I normally ask it to create a pantheon of collaborators and give it the names of the people I trust their opinions. Because then what it goes and does is it takes all of their known documented information that's available on the internet and then synthesizes my question against their database of opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've done that.
What'd you say?
I've done that.
I do it all the time. Like my shortcuts, for instance, I've got a prompt on my GPT that if I use the words invite the team, it automatically invites the 5 people who I respect most in the respective area. And it will literally go scan their opinions, tell me what each of them think about the topic, and then we'll synthesize that information into a decisive, if they were all in a room together, this is how they would vote as a team, as opposed to and it'll point out to me, well, this person actually prioritizes this, and this person prioritizes this, and this guy's angle is always here, and this is why we think this would be a good cohesive message that they all would agree on. Most people are just typing 5 words into ChatGPT and waiting for the answer, though.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
is
I've
dumbing
actually
down
typed
society.
in my own name. I've actually said, what would Mark Young say about this topic? And it will feed me back stuff that looks like it's kind of my thinking and my approach.
Oh, I said last week with ChatGPT because, again, I'm probably a more sophisticated AI user than most, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But I mean, I literally sat with my GPT last week while I was working on some other stuff, and I was like, "Hey, you know me pretty well by now. Describe me." And it literally listed everything it knows about me and some assumptions it made based on what it knows about me. I'm thinking that these and these and these. I'm like, and it was profoundly accurate. Here's some of the projects you're working on currently. These are the voices that we understand. When you're talking about this brand, this is who we're talking about. When we're talking about this brand, this is the avatar and whatnot. And I was like, well, all that's fantastic. Now, do me a favor. I want you to interview me and ask me questions you'd like to know the answers to. What would help you understand me better? And throughout the day, like, it would throw out a question to me and it would ask, like, what are your 3 top values? And I'm like, well, actually, I've identified 6 top values. I'm going to explain all of them to you. And, what if you were given a choice between impact and profit, which would you choose? And through circumstantial questions at me and ask me how I would deal with things circumstantially. And the insights are incredible. I actually used a GPT, and I recommend this, to people, truthfully. I actually used it and walked through a cycle and I forget the name of the book, but said, do me a favor and interview me based off of the principles in this particular book. And I want you to do this because I want you to identify what is my professional path forward based on all of the responses that you get from me. So it walked me through this like almost 40-minute interview, which I'm not typing all of this. I'm on my phone using audio and literally was cleaning my house, walking around with my phone on my my AirPods and just talking to ChatGPT as it was answering me questions or asking me questions. At the end of that, it put together this beautiful profile for me. And, some really good, some stuff that was irrelevant, some stuff was amazing. And then I said to it, and I'm like, well, I need you to do a follow-up for me. Like, based on everything you know about me, how do I get these initiatives and the things that you believe that are most important to me based on my responses? How do I get that down to my team? How do I get my team to do better at supporting me at these things? And here are the 5 key people on my team. How would you delve out these responsibilities to each of them? What should I get them to be focused on? And it wrote me a development plan for my leadership team. And based on KPI driven things, what percentage of this needs to go away? What are the tasks that bother me most about my job? And I mean, again, I don't mean to say that people should be turning their brains off, but I'll use the phrase with you that I've used repeatedly over the last, months, weeks, years, whatever, is AI is not a tool. It is a collaborator. And to the extent that you are willing to use it as a collaborator, you will produce better work. Too much of the population is still using it as a tool. Google is a tool. And if you're using a collaborator as a tool, it would be like hiring the highest paid person in your company and asking him or her to go get you lunch. Like, it is a misuse of the resource.
Well, and as I've said to our audience in the past, AI is here. You're not going to avoid it. You will adapt to it.
Yep.
And I think, and there will be a lot of jobs that will go away.
Yep.
But more likely than not, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone else who's good with AI.
Depends on the job.
Agreed. There's going to be some jobs that are just going to go away. Telemarketing, driving a truck is going to go away.
Yeah, we're on the precipice of a new economy. And I told you earlier that that the person I was interviewing asked what excites me about what I do every day. The second answer that I gave, the first answer was that I get to work with companies that help the world. My second answer to him, actually, and a really nice bow put on that story, was that we're on the precipice of an entirely new economy. And in the next 2 years or less, we're going to see the entire world shift. And I believe that we are on the cutting edge of being able to adapt, but then be the fast one to adopt. And there's a difference between adapting and adopting. And then people who adapt to something tend to be the people who pivot fast, but the ones who adopt are the ones that actually then lean into it for a longer period of time. And I think that's where we are right now. And I used the metaphor with him about we're on the inside of the turn. And especially in the marketing world, it's a very commoditized industry because everybody and their nephew owns an agency and they probably have one employee. But those of us who are really leaning into this change right now, we're the inside car. And where everybody's driving in a straight line, we're all about to make a left turn. But if I'm on the left bank of that turn, I'm going to be ahead of you in a few seconds. and I can control that lead by staying on the inside of the track.
Well, I like the race car analogy.
I knew you would. Making my father proud.
But the reality is, everybody, there are certain things that will not change. Humans are still going to want to look younger. They're still going to want to grow their hair better. They're still going to want to get rid of their aches and pains. They're still going to need to treat their toenail fungus. Whatever it is you're making, there's still a demand for what people need. But how you make it, how you market it, how you do the research on it is going to change, and you're going to need to leverage into that if you're going to succeed.
Absolutely.
By the way, I suspect that AI will become even more prevalent shortly in how the big retailers make their decision on what gets on the shelf.
Has to.
And you're going to need to be ready. You're going to need to be prepared to deal with that too.
AI
So, Mark, thanks for being with us today on CPG Insiders. Tell people how they can, contact you or follow you with your work.
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just themarkyoung.com. For those of the listeners who are used to the other Mark Young, I am the Mark Young. Themarkyoung.com is my website. They can also follow me on Instagram at themarkyoung. I'm on X as the Mark Young. It's easiest to find me that way. I will say my agency is Rise Agency, RYZE agency.com. I'm sure you'll put stuff like that in the show notes, but a perfect complement to the work that Jekyll and Hyde does for sure.
Well, folks, that's it for today. Any last thoughts, Justin?
No. I mean, this was great. I mean, I as we talked about, we get a lot of clients or prospective clients that come in here, and I'm sure, Mark, you deal with the same thing, which is we get a lot of people coming in here, and they're coming in because they believe that they already know what the answer is to their problems, and so they're always telling us, well, we need to be here, we need to be doing that. And so we always love this conversation because it allows people to take a step back and say, hold on, time out. Let's talk about what's going on in your business, talk about what's going on in your product. Let's really talk about the problems we're really trying to solve and where you're trying to go. And then let's talk about what are all the different tools we have at our disposal to get there. It's not about saying this is the right tool. It's all about actually discovering the right tools and combination to get you to where you want to be. And TikTok is a phenomenal tool, but as you did a great job of really walking through our listeners, here are high level signals to look out for to say maybe TikTok is a really great place for me, and then going to discover and find those professionals that know the space, that know how to market in it, that know really how to communicate in it, right? That know dynamically with all of your looking at your situation completely, right? Looking at your goals, your constraints. Here's how we can really make this work and really make this an acceleration engine for you, as opposed to, frankly, another money loser, which is kind of what happens a lot in marketing, right? I mean, you lose more money in marketing than anything else. So this is why you want to work with professionals, because they're going to give you the proper perspective and tools and abilities to get you to where you want to go, because they have the experience, they have the knowledge. And I just appreciate you, Mark, taking the time to really, bring some light and talk to our audience specifically about this, because it's always a hot topic, right? The next shiny object is always the biggest thing people want to know about, but really understanding how to use it is critical, so that, Mark, you and I talk about this a lot. Working with the right experts, they're going to save you more money and stopping you from making mistakes than they ever will at anything else. And I think this is a phenomenal show to really help people understand about how to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls.
So, folks, as always, if you enjoyed today's show, please go to wherever you get your podcast, leave us a 5-star review. If you're not subscribed to the show, hit the little subscribe button so you get every one of the podcasts as they're put up. Also, as always, if you ever want to reach out to us, you can go to cpginsiders.com or jekyllhydlabs.com. And Justin and I are always happy to talk to you if you've got questions. And by the way, if you go to either of those websites, you can talk to virtual me and ask the AI me questions. And it's actually pretty good. It's impressive what it can do.
I've got the virtual me now, but it's telling my staff that they're not allowed to come in and ask me questions until they've asked MarkBot the question.
I'm waiting till I can get virtual me up to the point where it can talk to you and your sister And you guys won't know that I'm not talking
I
to
assure you, we've been waiting for that too.
That's it for today, folks. We'll see you on the next episode of CPG Insiders. If you're looking to greatly increase sales on your CPG product, don't hesitate to contact us at Jekyll and Hyde Advertising and Marketing. By the way, the only advertising agency with a guaranteed result. Just go to jekyllhydeagency.com or feel free to give us a call at 800-500-4210.